The Ministry of Defence has officially confirmed the sinking of Liberian container ship MSC ELSA 3 off the Kochi coast early today due to flooding. The vessel went down with 640 containers at around 7:50 a.m. 13 had hazardous cargo in them. The vessel sank 38 nautical miles off Kochi, taking down hundreds of cargo containers, including some containing hazardous materials, into the Arabian Sea. The Chief Secretary of Kerala convened a high-level meeting to evaluate the environmental risk posed by the floating containers, some of which could reach shorelines in the coming days. The 184-meter vessel, operated by the Mediterranean Shipping Company, was en route from Virinyam port to Kochi when it began tilting sharply on May 24th due to inclement weather. The situation deteriorated rapidly, forcing 21 of the 24 crew members to abandon ship. Rescue operations conducted by the Indian Coast Guard and passing vessels saved all personnel on board. 9 crew members were rescued on Saturday by the Singapore-based vessel Han Yi, while 12 others were recovered by the Coast Guard ship Anvesh. The remaining 3, the captain, chief engineer and second engineer, stayed aboard in accordance with company protocol, but were later rescued following hazardous conditions by the Indian Navy vessel INS Sujata early on Sunday morning. Our special correspondent Siddharth MP is now joining us on phone. Siddharth, there's a huge problem that lies ahead. There's fear that the chemicals in the floating containers could start to leak into the sea. What measures has the Indian Coast Guard or the government in Kerala put in place to ensure that the leakage is not hazardous to marine ecosystem?
Hi, Eric. As you rightly pointed out, indeed, this is a very complicated and challenging situation by default because of the fact that there's massive quantities of oil. In fact, 2 types of oil. One, the fuel oil, and the other, the furnace oil that this vessel is carrying. And there's about 400 plus metric tons of oil that was carried on that particular vessel in tanks and in other storage zones. So this is one major area of risk. In addition to that, like you pointed out, there are 13 containers carrying hazardous cargo. There are also a couple of other containers carrying a different kind of chemical. So yes, as you pointed out, oil and chemical spill risk remains, and this is an obvious reality that the Indian government and the Kerala state government is looking at, because this is also a time when the southwest monsoon and that related weather activity is on overdrive on the Arabian Sea or the southwestern side of India's coast. This is a time when the southwest monsoon's onset is expected anytime. There's also a weather system evolving in the Arabian Sea, so this makes sea conditions rough. This also makes winds very gusty. This makes any operations also pretty challenging, be it air operations or be it at sea operations, when the situation at sea and also the situation in the air is pretty challenging with gusty winds. Any sort of operation that has to be carried out for remedial measures does face significant challenges. Let's also keep in mind that there are some standard operating procedures that can be done. The Coast Guard, the Indian Coast Guard, has actually got standard procedures where they use certain chemicals to disperse oil. They're known as OSD or oil spill dispersant. So this is a chemical that can be used to clear off any oil slick and to make sure that it doesn't cause any further damage. Likewise, depending on the chemical that's there in the water, they can also use certain chemicals to neutralize the impact of those chemicals. Further, there are also other devices, physical devices that can prevent the spread of oil in the water. They're known as booms and so on. And in certain cases, oil also can be collected and, disposed later on. So there are multiple methods, but all these methods have to be employed only once, they have a clear idea of what is the oil spill like, where is the oil spill happening, which is why they've also deployed special aircraft with the capability to map the extent of any oil spill if at all it arises. So this is the level of preparedness that exists, and we must also emphasize the fact that the Indian Coast Guard regularly conducts exercises to specifically combat oil spill, and they have ships and aircraft which are capable of carrying equipment that can be used to combat oil spills and chemical spills. So as far as preparedness is concerned, the Indian agencies exercise every year or every 2 years to specifically combat oil spills, and it's a nationwide thing. So clearly the capability exists, but the question remains, what will be the reality there at that particular location where this ill-fated vessel has sunk. And I think only daybreak will give us more clarity on what the real situation there is, Eric.
Siddharth MP, thank you very much for that update. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.